Action.
Hi, I'm Dan Bondroff and I'm an artist. I live in Miami, Florida, and today I'm going to be doing a 10-minute sketch. If you work in your sketchbook, which I hope all of you artists out there do work in your sketchbook, it's important to learn how to do compositions fairly quickly. And so what I'm going to do, and I do this with my students in my classrooms, I'm going to do this drawing and I'm going to break down the composition and I'm going to do it in 10 minutes. Okay. What I'm going to be using, I'm going to be using a Sharpie marker. Yeah, I'm not using pencils, so there'll be no erasing. So the pressure's on, no mistakes. Don't actually think that's too much pressure. If you make a mistake, it's okay. The lines actually, when you go into shading, do get covered up. And then I'm going to, so I'm going to draw it all out, and I'm going to do the outline drawings. The outlines, and then I'm going to shade it in. When I shade, I'll show you this first before I begin. When I shade, I'm going to break all my shading down into 5 shades. And the reason I do this is it just makes it easy to go and do these things in 10 minutes. So for number 5, we're going to get it as dark as possible. And the number 1, we're going to get it as light as possible. Number 3, these are mediums. We have medium darks. Perhaps we should apply a little bit darker. And then we have some medium lights. So what we're doing is when we shade it, we're going to break it down into its simplest form, okay? Simple composition and simple shades. Okay, so we're going to begin. So this looks like a very complicated photograph, and I'm going to show you that even complicated photographs can be broken down very easily. The first thing I start with is always the horizon line. One of the hardest things about doing any drawing or painting is starting it. The hardest line is always the first one. So if you're doing landscapes, the best way to do it is just decide where the horizon line is and put it in there. It's almost 1/3 of the way up. A little higher, right there. And put in that horizon line. It makes it very easy. If you always have to do the same thing every time, you don't have to think about it and get going with it right away. The biggest things in here, we're going to do this now that we have the horizon line, we're going to do this big to small. The biggest thing in here is the tree. Now, if you accidentally mismeasure and say you do the second biggest thing first, and then the biggest thing, or the third biggest thing, and the second, and the first, it doesn't really matter. The basic thing you want to do is keep a general big to small order to things. If you put a couple things in out of order, that's okay. The next thing, I'm going to group things. This group of trees, you see these leaves right here up front? They are a group that, if I combine them, it makes it so much easier on me. See how I combined this into one shape? The next biggest thing is this cluster back here. And it goes almost halfway across. And there are some trunks in there. I'm just going to show a few of those trunks. You don't want to do too much detail now, so nothing more than that. The next biggest thing is, let's get in the river and this group of rocks. The river is slightly off center, and the left bank comes down to there. The left bank is almost smack dab right in the center of the piece. And the one on the right comes down right there. Right there. Okay. And actually there's then we're going to do these groups of trees in the background. There's a group of trees right here. And actually this group is actually, it comes down into the rocks over here. So it's closer than the horizon line. And it goes all the way up to the top, pretty much straight up. It gets a little wider as it goes up. Notice I'm not going to put in any of the individual trunks. I'm just going to get the basic shape in there. And the next one is this big one right in the middle. And it's slightly to the left of center of the stream. And it goes up to the right. And it curves. Curves and goes about 2/3 of the way up to the sky. And then it breaks in half. There we go. The next group in the background, there are several of them. There's this foliage that's right here, and then it comes up to there. So we have this bit of foliage, and there's also a bit of foliage right around here. So let me put that in, it's right in, above the rocks. The next bit of foliage back here is this, and comes up about this high. And there's another bit of foliage that hangs down there. And there is a tree trunk right in the middle of that. How far as it comes out, you can see it all the way down to there. And before we get too far, I'm going to put in some of these orchids because they're right up front and I don't want too much overlapping them. The orchids are right there and right there, and I'll point, just do the edges of the stems right there so I don't have anything, so I'm not drawing over top of them. Okay, the next biggest thing, there's a group of trees back here, and you know something, there's a fence right here. Let's put the fence in, or not a railing. Let's put the railing in real fast. There's a group of trees back here. And then there's a smaller, lighter group. And there's actually some foliage, real light foliage back here. There's a group there. And the foliage for these trees in the background, it's very light. It comes in over here. And it goes slightly across. And there is a little tree in the back. And a little bit more foliage. Okay. We're going to go into the front and we're going to put in some of the rocks. When you're doing big clusters of rocks, it's very hard. You don't want to go left or right with them, or you'll spend all day doing it and be very frustrating. So what I like to do is just put the biggest ones in first. And notice how I put the biggest one in right here. If you've drawn a guideline for the edge of the bank, make sure that the big rock on the edge of the bank touches that guideline. And there we go. Do these rocks. Biggest rock, next biggest rock is right here. And then there are some smaller ones there. I'm going to try to do all of these pretty much big to small. Cluster of rocks over here, and right now I think I probably have, there's a group of rocks back here, there's 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, and there is a real dark rock over here. And some small ones on the shoreline. I think I have enough information that I could start in my shading now. So I got the basic line drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the darkest parts and I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I have 5s and 4s in this very dark tree. So for here, I did cross hatching. For here, on the drawing itself, I want to keep my lines going in the direction of the object. And so the direction of this growing tree is up. And so you want all your lines to be going up and down. And that'll give besides the piece of information of value, that's going to show form, which is the upward growth of a tree. Okay, the next darkest part is this background foliage in here. So I'm going to go and I'm going to crosshatch this because the foliage runs in multiple directions. It's darkest right in the middle. So that's where our 5s are going to be. And then towards the bottom and towards the top, those are where our 4s are going to be. And then I'm going to also show some vertical lines for the small trunks that are in here. And those are all 5s. Okay, the next darkest part is this foliage in here. Let's show the shape of some of those leaves, those groups of leaves. They fan out sort of like palm fronds fan out. And then we can go in the shadowed area and show the background in there. Those are more 4s and 5s. In the background, it's quite light except for this area in here. We have some darker shadows at the top. And this patch of foliage here, it's probably darkest at the bottom. Show it a little bit lighter at the top, probably 3 or 4, and then darker at the bottom, or 4 or 5. Okay, the tree trunk in the background, that's closer to a 5. The trees back here, probably going over my 10 minutes that I wanted to get this done in, but I'll get this mostly finished. And this foliage in the background is fairly light. This foliage up here fairly light. Trunk back there. This is, the tree here is quite dark actually. The foliage at the bottom is light. The rocks, when we're talking about the ground is, the background is somewhat dark, and to keep the rocks going pretty fast, we put the ground left and right. I'm only going to pick the dark side of the rock, and I'm going to show the way the rock is going. So the directional strokes are important for the rocks. And we show just the directions. Rocks are very angular unless they're stones in the water. Right here. Go. So this one. There's some small rocks there, and then there's this this bit of foliage that's in the background. Here's some horizontal lines that show the ground. The ground is a little darker up front, a little lighter on the bank over there. As far as the water goes, the water is, there's a little bit of a reflection from the rocks going into the water, but for the most part, it's very light on a scale of 1 through 5, 1s and 2s. As you get closer, you have a bit more of a shadow and some reflection. Water, unless it's a waterfall or rain, should always be left and right. It's a horizontal surface. Okay, and the last thing I think I have to do is there's a little bit of foliage in the back here. There we go. And that is it. That is my composition.